At one point, the subject of today's video was a 5-star recruit, was considered one of the best players to come out of a prestigious high school's history, and then was considered a 5-star transfer. He was unbelievably hyped, had pretty much unlimited potential, but now as we flash forward just a few years, he's not only flamed it at 2 big-time schools, but is now having to play lower-level football. By lower level, I mean the American Athletic Conference, and while that isn't necessarily a bad level of football, it is not where he was supposed to play. He was supposed to play 3 years and be a first-round pick. At least that's what 5-star prospects are supposed to do. Unfortunately, Denver Harris was never able to put it all together. He flamed out at 2 schools, got in trouble off the field, and now will be on his 3rd different program. In today's video, we're going to do a mini documentary and talk about what has gone wrong for Harris. We're going to go through how he became a big-time prospect to begin with, the schools he's flamed out at, why it's happened, and what's in the future for Denver Harris. But before we get started, if you love player story videos, this is definitely the channel for you, so be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support what I'm doing here, and let me know what player recruit I should cover in my next one. Now let's get started and talk about what went wrong for Denver Harris. So in order to understand what went wrong for Denver Harris, we first need to go back in time. After winning not 1, not 2, but 3 state championships in 5 years, you would think there'd eventually be an off year for North Shore High School. They are located in Texas, and every year they have numerous 4- and 5-star talents. Except every year they would always reload. Denver Harris was next in line, and it was a tough place to play. And at first, it wasn't the kind of challenge that Denver really wanted. He said, quote, "I love it. When I first came into the program, I wasn't used to it. I wanted to give up and transfer, but I stuck to the program because it's there to better us. It's a really tough and prestigious place because many big-time names have come through there. Guys such as Corey Redding, Earl Mitchell, Doris Armstrong, and Clavon Chasen are just a few examples of players who've played for that North Shore defense." Next up was Denver Harris. As just a sophomore, he was named a starter for the prestigious high school, and as a junior, he once again took his game to the next steps and got an offer from the University of Tennessee. He'd already had an SEC offer, and he was the next big thing. While things did look easy, it was tough for Denver, and he had to earn his place. He said, quote, "It was tough. I was new to the program, and the older guys hadn't seen me before. Sure, I got bullied a little bit at first, but then when they saw what I was made of, they started respecting me because they saw I was all about business. I wasn't being a little kid about it, and I had to earn their respect. Wanting to be the best, Denver studied the best. He looked at the film of Jalen Ramsey and Darrelle Revis, and those became his focal players to watch and learn from. It definitely ended up working out, as after his huge junior year, a lot of schools came calling. Alabama, Clemson, Auburn, Texas, Arkansas, and Baylor all really wanted to land his talents, and he was the next big recruit out of North Shore. Unfortunately, they have a reputation of sometimes having busts, but Denver was going to change that. But how did he even have this rise to begin with? He said one performance at one camp really helped him. He said, quote, "It really took off after I went to the Baylor camp last summer. I asked to cover all the D1 guys who were there, and I was the youngest one and did well. It showed I had a dog mentality and could compete with the best." Combining his size and speed, Harris was a little bit of a unicorn at the corner spot. He was a college defensive coordinator's dream, and obviously he wanted to play at a high level, but what was he looking for in a school? He said, quote, "It has to be big on leadership and togetherness. Somewhere that has genuine energy and has people who want to ride for each other." Scouts were eventually sold enough, and he was listed as a 5-star recruit. But at the end of his junior year, he would have a major setback. He would tear his ACL in the playoffs, and surely this had an effect on his career down the road. I mean, for the most part, corners really have to rely on their athleticism at times, and having an injury like that, I'm sure, did not help. In the meantime, he was busy trying to figure out where he was going to go. He took official visits to Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, and Alabama, and those were his final 4. Where did the experts think he would end up? Ironically, Rivals said, quote, "While the Aggies remain in the picture, this is shaping up to be a 3-man horse race between Texas, Bama, and LSU. He's a priority for each of those schools, and while it certainly felt as if the Longhorns and Tide were pulling away, a return trip back to Baton Rouge is a storyline to follow." Honestly, I included this quote just to show how ridiculous recruiting is and how none of us really know what's going on. The school he ended up going to is the one they said wasn't a factor. It's kind of funny. They couldn't have been more wrong, and Harris would eventually make his decision. Except there was weird timing. The early signing day period came just a few days before the state championship game, and not only did he have to prepare for the biggest game of his life, but he had to make the biggest decision of his life. He ended up signing his papers to a school, but did not announce them until after the championship game, which they did in fact win. Where did he sign? Well, you already know. He chose the Texas A&M Aggies, and this was a huge get. They beat out Texas, Bama, and LSU, as Bama kind of stopped going after him, and LSU's cornerbacks coach left for Florida. The Aggies won the sweepstakes, and he was one of the top corners in the class. In fact, he was the highest rated corner to ever go to Texas A&M, and he joined two other guys in the Aggies class, Bobby Taylor and Marquise Groves Killebrew. What did scouts think? Well, they said, quote, "He's a tall, long cornerback prospect with elite frame potential relative to the position." At least that's what Gabe Brooks from 24/7 Sports said. He was also listed as a 5-star player, as according to 24/7 Sports, he had those 5 stars, was the number 4 corner, and the 23rd best player in the class of 2022. In case you're not familiar with how that ranking system works, those are the guys they project to be first-round picks 3 years down the line, or at some point in their career. Denver Harris was the next big thing out of North Shore, who was going to a big-time SEC program and had NFL future written all over him. Except, things wouldn't exactly pan out. Now let's take a look at his college career. When Denver first arrived at Texas A&M, he was super hyped up and actually had a great start to his career. He was a freshman mid-season All-American, and in the 5 games he had played, he had totaled 14 tackles and 3 pass breakups. According to Pro Football Focus at the time, he had just allowed only 4 catches for 28 yards after playing 211 snaps. He was the highest ranking freshman corner in the SEC and the 3rd highest in all of college football. Unfortunately though, he would be in hot water. Him, wide receiver Chris Marshall, and offensive lineman PJ Williams were eventually suspended indefinitely as a result of a locker room incident. This happened at the South Carolina game, and with that, he was in trouble. He would end up getting out of it, but he was also suspended another time. The other time came before their matchup against Miami, as he apparently violated curfew, and then the second time was obviously a locker room altercation. With all that stuff lingering over his head, he wanted a fresh start. And in 2022, he decided to enter the transfer portal and became the number 2 player overall in the portal. He was definitely a huge deal, and he had immediate hype right away at LSU. Unfortunately, things were rocky there too. He apparently wasn't a part of the team picture and missed a week of practice as well. He also didn't travel with the team to Orlando, as in the opener against Florida State, he wouldn't end up playing. He would finally make his debut for LSU the next 3 games, as he'd play against Grambling State, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. He also ended up seeing snaps against both Ole Miss and Auburn, and on the season ended up with 6 tackles with 2 pass deflections. He 100% was a bust there, and things just could not go well for him. He got in trouble again in Baton Rouge, as he was apparently involved in a skirmish during practice. This led to talks of him being suspended, and he was put in a tough position once again. So after a decent start at Texas A&M, he got in trouble twice and ended up flaming out there. He transferred to LSU with a ton of hype and ended up getting in trouble and putting up lackluster stats when he did play. Now he decided to enter the portal for the second time and finally found his school a couple weeks ago, as he announced he'd be going to UTSA. The Roadrunners have been one of the better Group of 5 programs over the last 3 years, but for him this is definitely a downgrade. He'll go back closer to home, and he'll have a chance to get a lot of playing time and fix his career. The Roadrunners lost their 4 top defensive backs from last year. Harris should be able to start right away and play for a team that should compete to win 8 or 9 games. I could definitely see this going one of 2 ways. He either gets in trouble a 3rd time and flames out and is done with football for good, or he finally gets it together, has a terrific season for UTSA, and ends up going to the NFL draft. From there, he'd be one of those typical guys who ends up saving his career at a smaller school, but honestly, I don't really know what's going to happen. It seems that Denver has not been able to control himself since he got to college, and I don't necessarily know why that happens, but when you're used to winning and used to being the star, it's definitely an adjustment going to college, especially in the SEC, where you are not guaranteed anything. To be fair, he hasn't necessarily done anything super bad, but Denver has definitely been a bust. He was a 5-star player, the next big thing out of North Shore, and has now flamed out at 2 SEC schools. He's definitely going to have to earn it this fall at UTSA, and I hope the best for him, and I hope he ends up balling out. I don't really know what will happen, but what do you guys think? If you're an LSU, A&M, or a Texas high school football fan, what has gone wrong for Denver Harris? Who's another recruit I could take a look at in my next video? And before you go, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.